A wedding built on death in silence, but what the bride did on the first night left everyone speechless. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the delicate lace veil that framed her face like a ghost from a different life. 20 years old, yet her eyes had aged a decade overnight. The dress was perfect white, hand-stitched, worth more than her family's vineyard now crumbling under debt. But no one in the room dared call her beautiful, not because she wasn't there, but because everyone knew beauty had no place in transactions. Helena wasn't marrying for love. She wasn't marrying for companionship, or even status. She was marrying for survival. Her parents had signed away her fate in a series of hushed conversations, with the sound of collectors banging on their door in the background. She had heard her mother weep at night, heard her father's voice crack as he begged faceless men for one more extension. And when that last door closed, they turned till the only escape left: marriage. He was 77, a billionaire with hands that had built empires in buried enemies. He owned real fields, media conglomerates, in hearts of politicians. He also owned, now, Helena. The deal was simple on paper. Helena would marry Sheikh Marwa Al-Fayad, heir desert fortune and father of 4 grown children. In exchange, the Al-Fayad Foundation would purchase the failing vineyard, clear the debts, secure the family's future. The ceremony was held in a cathedral older than the entry itself. No flowers, no music, just the sound of footsteps echoing on marble as Helena walked down the aisle beside her father, who couldn't meet her eyes. Marwan stood like a relic from another world, regal in white and gold, face unreadable, lips thin with disinterest. His eyes, however, never left her. Cold, calculating, ownership disguised the ceremony. There were no vows, just signatures, contracts. In silence, the media called each a fairy tale from the ashes. But inside the palatial estate where she was taken that night, it felt more like a mausoleum. Dinner was served in a room large enough to house a village. Marwan said nothing. Helena tried to speak once, only to be silenced by a raised hand. Every move she made echoed not just in sound, but in judgment. The staff didn't look at her. The guards didn't acknowledge her. It was as if she didn't exist, except as a piece of the mansion's decor. And then came the night. She was led to a wing of the palace no one else used. A room filled with opulence, velvet, gold, silence. She waited. Time passed. Midnight approached. The door creaked open, and Marwan entered. No words, no emotion, just presence. Helena stood, heart pounding, and sure of what was expected, or what would be taken. He moved toward her slowly, a predator toward Tiohashi. She could see the sweat on his brow, his breathing shallow, and just as he reached to touch her, he collapsed. A thud, a gasp, a silence louder than screams. The medics came, quickly, too quickly, as if they had been waiting for this. Within minutes, he was rushed away. Helena was left standing in her wedding gown, untouched, unclaimed, unwanted but no longer invisible. The palace changed overnight. Rooms that had been locked were now hers till her. Servants that ignored her now bowed. She wasn't a bride. She wasn't a widow. She was something worse, a question no one wanted to answer. And as the headlines exploded, young bride, billionaire, gold digger or victim, Helena remained silent. Because in the chaos, she had noticed something no one else seemed to care about. A signature on the last page of the marriage contract. Marwan's signature, shaky, incomplete, not from the night of the wedding, from 2 days before. What had really happened? And more importantly, why had they chosen her? Helena woke up the next morning not as a wife, not as a widow, but as something far more dangerous in the palace house and unknown. Whispers followed her like shadows, footsteps that paused when she turned, eyes that looked away too quickly. She was living a home paid for with silence, surrounded by people who knew more than they would ever say. She asked questions. No one answered. Where was Marwan now? The hospital, they said. Which hospital? A private one. When could she see him? When the time is right. The time never came. Instead, she received papers. A document confirming her position as legal spouse, with partial inheritance rights, sealed with a clause. If Marwan died, she would receive 20% of his estate. The vineyard would remain protected, and she would be granted citizenship in the Emirate of Al-Qadir. It felt unreal, a twisted joke. She had spent a single day as his bride, exchanged no words, no touches, and now she stood at the edge of an empire she never asked for. But not everyone accepted her position so easily. The children arrived one by one. First, Hafi the eldest. Sharp-suited, sharper-tongued. He didn't shake her hand. Didn't look at her. Just walked into the house like it just belonged to him. Then came the twins, Layla and Soraya, elegant and cold, their smiles coated with venom. Last, the youngest Amar, who said nothing at all. They sat her down in the grand drawing room. The chandelier cast a spotlight above her head. Hafi was the first to speak. "This is not yours," he said, gesturing to the room, the palace. The silence around them. "You think you've played this well, but you hit just a piece on the board. You trust me, pieces get swept away." Helena didn't respond. Chico didn't. Her throat was tight, not with fear but with the suffocating weight of realization. She had been dropped into a game that began long before her. She wasn't a guest. She was bait. Each day that passed was colder. The stuff became distant again. Meals were delivered, not shared. Doors were locked without notice. Rumors filled the tabloids. Seductress or savior? How a vineyard girl snared. The chic. Paparazzi camped outside the walls. Helicopters hovered. And the one man who could speak the truth lay motionless in a hospital Chico didn't reach. At night, she walked the marble corridors of the palace, the echo of her steps the only sound. Sometimes, she paused outside Marua's study locked. Sealed since the incident, she could feel something behind those doors. Not answers, but secrets. One night, she found a note, slipped under her door. No signature, just 5 words, scrawled in a right hand. He knew this would happen. She stared at the paper for hours. Who left it? What did it mean? Had Marwan planned his own downfall? If so, why involve her? Her dreams became haunted. Visions of Marwan's eyes, distant and heavy. Visions of her father's trembling hands as he signed the agreement. Visions of herself at 7, running through the vineyards, before the debts, before the silence. What had she become? The pressure mounted. Investigators called. Reporters found her school friends. One even paid a former teacher to say Helena had always been ambitious beyond her station. Even her own parents, who had promised this was only for show, now refused her calls. The silence from home was louder than the storm inside the palace. Until one morning, a storm came literally. A car pulled into the estate, flanked by black security vehicles. Helena watched from the window as the gates opened, as guards whispered into radios, as servants scrambled. A man stepped out, young, tall, with eyes like polished steel and a scar that curved beneath his left cheekbone. The household froze. Even the wine seemed to stop. Helena whispered to herself without knowing why. "Who is he?" The answer came like a breath of fate from the housekeeper beside her, barely audible. "Prince Idris, the son no one talks about." Prince Idris was the kind of name spoken in hushed tones across the empire, a legend entangled in mystery, scandal, and exile. Rumors said he had disappeared after defying his father. Others whispered of war crimes, forbidden love, and betrayals behind palace walls. But no one ever expected him to return, especially not now. And yet, there he was. Helena watched from the upper balcony as he crossed the courtyard. His steps were deliberate, his presence magnetic as if the marble beneath him had been carved just to echo his return. The stuff bowed, not out of loyalty, but fear. His reputation had walked in the door 5 seconds before he did. Later that day, she was summoned to the library, a room she had never entered before. The guards didn't speak. The silence around them was heavier than any command. When she walked in, he was waiting. No crown, no ceremony or hobby. Just a black suit that seemed to swallow light. "You are Helena," he said, modest statement then question. She nodded. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he pointed to a chair. "Sit. We need to speak." She obeyed, heart pounding. He poured a drink. Didn't offer her one. "I came here," he began, "because my father lies in a hospital with more machines than skin. The world now believes he was tricked by a child bride from a bankrupt vineyard." Helena swallowed. "He didn't trick him," she whispered. His eyes narrowed. "Then convince me." So she told him everything. The debts, the arrangement, the wedding, the silence, the collapse. Her voice trembled at first, but as she spoke, something awakened, not rage, not sorrow, but a deep, quiet strength. Idris dignité interrupted. He just watched. When she finished, he Hosing walked to a cabinet behind the desk, pulled out a folder thick with documents. You he not there. First, he said, voice low. She blinked. What? He tossed the folder onto the table. Photographs, legal papers, newspaper clippings. Women, all young, all vanished after brief encounters with his father. Most were written off as scandals, affairs. Some labeled gold diggers. Others, never mentioned again. He has done this before, Idris said. But you were different. You were public. The room spun. You he telling me he married others? No, Idris said. He hunted them, quietly, always under the guise of saving someone. A debt, a contract, an offer too generous to question. In then silence, Helena felt the air leave her lungs. She wasn't a bride. She was a pattern. But why? She whispered. Idris sat again, his eyes softened for the first time. Because control was his obsession. Not money, not power, control. My mother learned that too late. Helena dared ask, what happened to her? He looked away. She disappeared. No body, no trial, just vanished. He told the world she left him, but I was 13. I heard the screams. Silence fell like a curtain between them, thick, cold. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Idris leaned forward. Because I need to know if you he just another piece, or something else. A pause. Because if you he telling the truth, Helena, you may be the key to bringing and they'll forget. That night, sleep never came. She stood by the window, watching storm clouds gather. The empire outside gleamed with golden marble, but beneath each ran rivers of lies. She wasn't sure who to trust. Idris, with his scarred past in piercing eyes, was still a mystery, but something told her he wasn't lying. The next morning, she found a package on her bed. No note. Inside a copy of her wedding contract, but this version had something the others didn't. A hidden clause. In fine print, em Arabic script she hadn't been taught. It read, in the event of medical incapacitation, the spouse shall assume control of interim estate assets unless contested by blood heirs within 30 days. Her hands trembled. This wasn't a marriage. It was a fuse. Each had already been lit. Helena stared at the contract until the ink blurred into shadows. The hidden clause was not just a footnote, it was a bombshell. A trigger designed to explode silently if the right eyes ever found it. She now understood the whispers, the isolation, the eyes watching her every move. They were mourning their father. They were waiting for her to slip, because the countdown had already begun. 28 days left. 28 days before the heirs could legally strip her of everything. Yet, in those 28 days, she held unprecedented power. She had the estate, the titles, the influence, but no control. Every decision was questioned, every request delayed. Her phone mysteriously stopped working. Her internet access was under maintenance. Every corner of the palace seemed to echo with the same warning, you do not belong here. And then came the media ambush. A story broke on an international tabloid, the Vineyard Vixen, Billionaire Bride or Black Widow. They had photographs, private moments. Helena on the palace grounds. Helena in her wedding gown. Helena looking out the window at night. The article called, her manipulative, claimed she was trained to seduce rich men. One quote even claimed she had been spotted with Idris in compromising positions. The public was divided. Half believed she was a victim. The other half wanted her imprisoned. And behind all of each, she saw the fingerprints of someone close. Not a stranger. Family. Each was Leila, Hafi's twin sister. Leila had worked in Pierre before the family feud erupted. She had the connections, the motive, the cruelty. Helena confronted her in the East Wing salon. Leila didn't deny it. Your story was too clean, she said, swallowing a glass of wine. The world loves a tragedy, but they obsess over a villain. You welcome. Helena's hands clenched, but she didn't rise till the bait. Because what Leila didn't know was that Helena had started her own quiet investigation. With Idris, they met in secret in the vineyard courtyard after midnight. In the back of the old stables, in the abandoned servants' wing where no cameras reached. Idris brought her filhos, accounts, testimonies from former staff. Helena brought intuition, questions, and an unshakable determination. Together, they discovered something horrifying. In the 3 years before Elena's marriage, 5 young women had vanished after being seen with Marwa. Some were interns, one was a translator, 2 others came from financially desperate families just like hers. Each disappearance was ruled an accident or voluntary exile. None were investigated, but one woman, Nadia, had left behind a diary, half burned, found by a cleaner who had kept each hidden. The last entry read, "He says Yemi the only one he trusts, the only one who sees him, but I see too much. Now Yemi scared. He is not who the world thinks he is. If something happens, tell me. Find the Hid book. It has everything." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. The Hid book, a single object that could unravel the empire. But where was it? She searched Marwa's quarters, but everything had been sealed. Even the maids were forbidden to clean there now. Only Idris had a master key. One night, after a carefully planned distraction involving a fire alarm, they entered the forbidden suite. It was like stepping into a mausoleum. The room smelled of aged perfume and cigars. Books lined the shelves, but all were decorative empty shelves, until they reached the 3rd shelf behind the bed. There, wedged between 2 volumes of Quranic commentary, was a Hid leather journal. No title, no lock, just pages. Pages filled with names, dates, transactions, photographs, secrets. It was real, it was damning, it was deadly, because now, someone else knew they had it. 2 days later, a servant Elena trusted was found dead in the estate lake. They called it suicide, but the last text he had sent to Elena read only one word: run. The death of the servant changed everything. His name was Sammy, 19 years old, quiet, loyal. He used to leave Jasmine at her door every morning, never asking for anything in return. And now, his body was pulled from the lake like a discarded secret. The palace held no funeral, no statement, just silence. But silence had become Elena's trigger. She stood before his empty quarters, heart heavy, Hid journal clutched in her hand, and she made a promise: no more fear, no more hiding. If she was still be hunted, then she would run toward the truth, not from it. That night, she returned to the library, where Idris was waiting. He looked up, saw the fire in her eyes, and said nothing. He didn't have to. She opened the Hid journal between them. Together, they went page by page. Some entries were mundane meetings, purchases, social obligations, but others were damning. Payments to doctors for falsified diagnoses, secret surveillance orders, anonymous donations to families whose daughters had gone missing. And then, letters written by Marwan himself, till someone called the council. Elena read them with trembling hands. EV contained the last threat. She wanted be missed. They suspect nothing. The vineyard goal is perfect. Navi, desperate, malleable. And worst of all, if anything goes wrong, the boy will return. He always does. She turned to Idris. He meant you. He looked away, jaw clenched. I always suspected he saw me as a contingency, a threat he couldn't eliminate without exposing his empire. But now I see, I was a pawn just like you. They were no longer enemies, no longer strangers. They were survivors of the same machinery. In the weeks that followed, they grew closer not out of passion, but mutual purpose. Elena found herself speaking more freely, laughing softly when he challenged her, crying in his presence without shame. Idris, once stoic and cold, now offered moments of quiet kindness, a hand on her shoulder, a word of affirmation, a shared silence that meant everything. He took her to the vineyards one evening, the sun melting over the hills. This is where it all began for you, he said, and maybe where it should begin again. She nodded, tears forming. I never wanted any of this. I know, he said, that is why you must claim it. He handed her a legal document, a petition to challenge the clause in the marriage contract, not to claim Marwa's estate, but to dismantle it, piece by piece. You'd be giving up billions, Idris said. I'd be gaining myself, she replied. And for the first time since the wedding, Elena slept, but peace was short-lived. Leila and Rafi had discovered the alliance. They confronted Idris during a formal family gathering, all heirs present, all eyes watching. Leila, dressed in black silk, held up a printed copy of a photo. Elena and Idris walking hand in hand at the vineyard. Do you think this is love? She sneered. It is betrayal. Till father, till family, Teu legacy, Idris dignité flente. This legacy was built on pain, and you think you can fix it by sleeping with the help? The slap came before she finished the sentence. Not from Idris, from Helena. The room fell silent. Helena stood tall, voice steady. I am not the help. I am the last mistake your father ever made. The first thing this family will never control. Again, she turned and walked out, Idris behind her. That night, they didn't speak much. They didn't need to. They stood on the palace balcony as lightning broke the horizon. Two orphans of a broken dynasty, two warriors born of silence. For the first time, Helena felt something other than fear, duty, or grief. She felt alive. The days that followed were calm on the surface, but beneath the glassy waters of the estate, storms gathered. Helena knew her presence still drew suspicion, but something had shifted. She was no longer prey, no longer a pawn in someone else's game. She was the one holding the board now, and she wasn't alone. The relationship between her and Idris had deepened. It wasn't marked by fiery declarations or grand gestures. It was marked by late night conversations under flickering chandeliers, by hands that found each other instinctively, by a silence that, for once, wasn't painful, but healing. Still, she questioned it. Could love really grow from such a twisted garden? Could anything born of violence, greed, and manipulation survive outside this cursed palace? Idris had his own ghosts. The disappearance of his mother, the exile that left scars, deeper than the one on his face. In the knowledge that, no matter how much he rejected his father's legacy, his blood still bore the same name. But in Helena, he saw redemption. In Idris, Helena saw clarity. Together, they became more than just victims of circumstance. They became architects of an ending in the beginning of something no one expected. They began dismantling the foundation quietly. One shell company at a time, one false charity after another. Idris used his contacts in the foreign press. Helena used the hedge book like a sword. Anonymous packages began appearing on journalists' desks. Leaks, documents, photos. And then, an arrest. Not of Helena, not of Idris, but of Rafi. Fraud, bribery, obstruction of justice. He had used company accounts to launch smear campaigns against Helena, paid off reporters, forged documents, and most damning of all tried to bribe a judge to block the investigation. The media turned. Helena, once vilified, now stood as the woman who exposed the rot within one of the most powerful families in the Gulf. She held a press conference, wearing a simple black dress, no diamonds, no veil, just truth. I married a man I did not love, to save a family who had already sold me. But I will not be sold again. Not by him, not by his heirs. I stand here today to say, this empire will not define me. I am not a bride. I am not a widow. I am not your tragedy. The world watched, and the world listened. Idris stood beside her, not as a prince, but as a man finally choosing his path. In private, he told her, when I was a boy, I thought love was power. That the one who controls the kingdom wins the heart. But I was wrong. Love is not conquest. It is surrender. I surrender to you. She didn't cry. She simply placed her hand over his heart. He whispered, then let us build something. They can burn. They married in secret. No press. No palace. Just two witnesses, the vineyard caretaker and the housekeeper who once feared to look her in the eye. Under an olive tree where her childhood swing once hung, Helena spoke vows for the first time in her life, words chosen freely, not scripted by lawyers. I promise to never trade myself for peace again. I promise to love without chains. I promise to never be silent unless it's chasing of what we build together. Idris answered with just one sentence. Your freedom is my vow. As the sun sits behind the hills, painting the sky in burnt gold and violet, Helena felt something she hadn't felt since she was a girl barefoot in the vineyard rows. Hope, liberation at the edge of legacy. Final blow came not with violence, but with a signature. The lawyers gathered. The heirs refused to attend. Only Idris, Helena, and a small team of trusted officials sat in the ancestral court of Al-Qadir, the place where fortunes had been forged through corruption in silence for generations. On the table, the Al-Fayyad estate. Helena held the hedge book in one hand, the dissolution contract in the other. She had the legal right to claim everything. She could become one of the richest women in the Middle East overnight palaces, riches, land titles, priceless artigo. But she didn't want it, because every brick was stained, every coin cursed. She slid the contract across the table and said clearly, I renounce all rights to the Alfeado legacy. The room gasped. Even Idris looked at her in disbelief. Helena, are you, free? She said. If freedom is the only inheritance you'll ever accept. The judge hesitated, then nodded. With the press of a pen, she relinquished everything. He claimed something greater. The headlines exploded. Billionaire widow walks away from empire. Bride of scandal rewrites her ending. Helena of the Vineyard chooses love over legacy. She Idris disappeared from public view shortly after. No more cameras. No more palaces. Just the soft hills of a quiet region in Tuscany, where a new vineyard had been purchased. Not the one her parents destroyed, that one belonged to the past. This one was hers, planted from scratch, row by row, seed by seed. Locals called it La Renascita, the rebirth. She and Idris lived simply. They worked the land together. They raised a daughter fierce and quiet like her mother, with eyes that searched for truth like her father. And though the world moved on, and new scandals replaced the old, whispers of their stories still echoed in the darker corners of power. Because Helena hadn't just escaped, she had won. By refusing to play, she became a legend not because of what she took, but because of what she chose to leave behind. Encerramento, closing narration. You've just heard a story of sacrifice, deception, power, and ultimately, liberation. But now I want to hear your voice. Do you believe Helena made the right choice by walking away from billions? Or would you have stayed and taken the crown? Let us know in the comments below. Your thoughts matter. If this story stirred something in you, if it made you reflect, question, or simply feel something deep, share it with a friend, with someone who needs to hear that sometimes walking away is the real victory. Subscribe to $1 Billion Curve for more true stories transformed into cinematic redemption arcs. Turn on notifications because the next ending might just change the way you see beginnings.